Corrupt Authority by yours truly. Marina shook Kenta. "Hey," she whispered. "Rise and shine. We're here." Kenta stirred, groaned, and placed a hand to his forehead. "My head hurts." "We're pretty far above sea level," said Hibiki, opening his door. "Just yawn a lot and focus on your breathing." "I'm already yawning a lot," mumbled Yusin, trudging up the gravel path to the cabin porch. "I should have just slept right in the car." As Hibiki started to follow him, he caught a sudden movement out of the corner of his eye. The flash of a blue, duck-billed head peeked at them from around the side of the cabin. It was gone a second later. "A Pokemon?" he thought, though nobody else seemed to have taken notice. They gathered at the wooden door, and Yusin knocked 3 times. A few seconds passed, and nobody answered, although the wind began to pick up again. Marina groaned. "Great. Cold and windy. Yusin, try the door and see if it's unlocked." "People do lock their doors, even out here," Yusin said back, but he reached for the knob anyway. Before his hand touched, the cabin door suddenly swung open inwards, and they stood face to face with a tall, thin man wearing a brown duster cloak. Hibiki swallowed guiltily, thinking about how close they might have been to walking right into an occupied place. But the man's eyes lit up in recognition, and Yusin smiled. "Well, hello, Yusin. You're out and about early. I was just about to head off for some morning fishing." "I'm terribly sorry to intrude." Yusin pointed behind him at Kenta, Marina, and Hibiki. "These are my friends, and we were traveling through but couldn't find a place to stay in the area. Guys?" He turned around and held his arm up to the brown-coated man in the cabin. "This is Mr. G.R.I.P. He's a Pokemon veterinarian." Kenta held out his hand. "It's nice to meet you, sir." "Roots!" Everyone looked down. At Mr. G.R.I.'s feet stood a Pokemon barely a foot tall, with a white body, a green helmet head, and a rounded red horn on its forehead. A moment later, another mostly white Pokemon glided from the back room of the cabin. Hibiki recognized the 2 Pokemon as Ralts and Togetic, 2 relatively valuable Pokemon known for their sensitivity. Ralts looked at them for a few seconds, while Togetic hovered the group in circles. Hibiki got the feeling that they were being scanned, but ironically, he found the presence of the Pokemon pleasurable. "All right, that's enough," laughed Mr. G.R.I.P., stepping back from the doorway. "Let's not leave our guests out in the cold wind. Come, warm yourselves by the fire, unless you have any luggage to carry?" "No, it's just us. It was a very impromptu trip." Yusin smiled apologetically and crossed the threshold of the door. "Thank you. I really am sorry to be coming to you for aid a second time." He stumbled suddenly, right as he was passing Mr. G.R.I.P., and fell into a kneeling position. Hibiki gasped, and Marina hurried to help him to his feet. "If you really were this exhausted, you could have asked me to drive part of the way," she said, mildly reproachful. "Especially if we were driving on steep slopes like that." "Yeah, but here's the thing. Nobody touches my baby steering wheel but me." Hibiki put a fist to his mouth to stifle a laugh and turned to Kenta, but the laughter died on his lips as he saw his brother's facial expression. Kenta was staring, not at Yusin, but at Mr. G.R.I.'s left leg, where Yusin had just been. His expression, just moments ago dull from sleep, was sharp and curious. Mr. G.R.I.P. turned and headed into the living room with them, while Togetic shut the door behind them. The room was the largest in the house, with several chairs and couches in a U-shape facing the main mantelpiece. As G.R.I.P. had said, there was a roaring fire in the hearth, and the group gathered gladly around it. Yusin sighed and dropped sideways onto the middle couch, his head plopped onto the cushion. "I just need a moment," and he was sound asleep. Mr. G.R.I.P. looked at Yusin's dozing form for a moment with a sympathetic smile, then glanced over at his teenage audience, still standing. "Well then, I suppose you'll have to catch me up. What's your story?" Hibiki froze up. What were they supposed to tell this man? That they were patrolling the area on a hunt for Mewtwo and Suicune? Their actions represented the most extreme defiance to G.R.I.P.'s policies of owning Uber Pokemon. Not to mention, it risked revealing the fact that they had Master Balls. He and Marina both turned and looked expectantly at Kenta. This was, after all, his plan. There it was again, that odd, scrutinizing stare, as if Kenta was looking through Mr. G.R.I.P. and seeing something that nobody else was. "Is this your way of giving us a chance to explain ourselves?" he finally asked, quietly, almost to himself. Hibiki looked at him doubtfully. Kenta? Yeah, that's why he asked. But then he caught sight of Mr. G.R.I.'s face. It was also scrutinizing, calculating, eyes narrowed and focused. The room's atmosphere went from warm and friendly to hot and tense in a matter of seconds. "I will answer your question," Kenta said after another long pause. "But I think it would only be polite to catch my friends up with what's going on." "Yeah, what is going on?" asked Marina nervously. "Why are you guys glaring at each other? He just took us in." "Maybe. But what is he, I wonder?" asked Kenta. "Mr. G.R.I., I offered you my hand outside, but you didn't take it." Hibiki felt his indignation rising. "Oh, come on! You're mad because he didn't shake your hand?" "And there we stood with the wind whipping around, but your clothes never moved an inch. And then, when Yusin fell over from lack of sleep, I saw him fall through you." Now it was Marina's turn to confront Kenta. What are you saying? That he's a ghost?" "Here, catch." With a sudden flick of his wrist, Kenta sent a rage candy bar spinning at Mr. G.R.I. The man veered out of the way, and the chocolate bar struck the wall under the stairs. "You were fast enough to dodge it this time." "Kenta!" Hibiki injected, horrified. "Stop throwing candy at our host!" "I thought he'd be hungry," Kenta responded, shrugging. "You see, he claimed that he was just about to head on a fishing trip, but I don't see any rods or nets. Do you?" "Kenta, you are out of line!" said Marina sharply, launching herself off her chair and marching angrily over to his cushion. "What has gotten into you?" Kenta sat in her shadow, looking at her with cool resolve. "So, you don't buy any of my observations, huh? You think I'm just seeing things?" "Maybe. I don't know, but this isn't like you. Where's your sense of courtesy?" "Check the back wall." "Don't give me that." "No, just trust me on this. The back wall under the stairs. What do you see?" "Your stupid candy bar!" "No, above that." Marina heaved an exasperated sigh. "I don't know what you want me to look at." "Your shadow." "What about it?" "You and Mr. G.R.I. are the only two people standing right now." "So?" A grim smile settled into Kenta's face. "Where's his?" Marina's eyes shot back up to the wall, as did Hibiki. One shadow. They both turned to stare back at Mr. G.R.I., who smiled and crossed his arms before him. "So," he had an impressed voice, "I applaud your observation ability. It is far keener than any humans I have seen for a long time, Yusin's included. You are correct. I'm not really here at all." "It takes an observer to know an observer," Kenta said, facing Mr. G.R.I. fully. "I'm still wondering about your ability to read minds, though. It's not an accident that you just so happen to have a Ralts and Togetic standing sentinel at the door, Pokemon whose speciality is reading people's hearts and intentions. We passed the test, if I'm not mistaken, but that takes us back to the original question. What could these well-intentioned people be doing way up here in the mountain where one of them met a superpowered Pikachu? A little different than your tell me your story, perhaps, but it's more specific." "Careful," said Mr. G.R.I. lightly. "You'll make too many assumptions." "Until we establish trust, I have to," Kenta replied. "It's an uphill battle for one who has cloaked his identity from the start." "You mean like you did?" Hibiki blurted out. He inwardly chastised himself. Kenta turned and looked at him, annoyed yet slightly amused. "Not the time and place, Runt, and I didn't start out with disguises."